Did you know that recent studies show that nearly 70% of all media portrayals of men are negative stereotypes? And we're not just talking TV shows and movies, we're talking news headlines as well that are perpetrating these stereotypes. So, why is it happening? What's the effect of this? Let's jump in and talk about it, and let's have a look. Today we're discussing a controversial topic, which is the rise of misandry in media. So misandry, or the dislike or prejudice against men, seems to be on the increase in things like TV shows, movies, news articles, headlines, etc. But is this just a simple tool that's being used? Is it something that's, harmless? Or is there something deeper than that? Let's discuss this further. So let's break it down. Misandry in the media often is brought about as like caricatures of men. So think of the lazy stereotypes, incompetent fathers in sitcoms, clueless dads in TV adverts, psychopathic men in TV shows where they're always the crime lords or criminals. It's often down to lazy writing, but there's this prevalence that men are portrayed in a certain way and are very caricature based. But it doesn't stop there. News headlines also push these kind of stereotypes of men as the perpetrators or aggressors while ignoring, acts of bravery or heroism that men do. Conversely, they also downward, portray crimes that women do that are very similar to crimes that are being sensationalized that men do. And we will go into some examples of this. Then, also conversely to portraying men as these horrible aggressors, you get things like headlines around things like domestic violence or false allegations that men are experiencing, and these are downplayed tremendously. The problem with these things is it's not coincidences. These are patterns, and they are shaping public perception of what men are and what men are capable of and how men react to things and how men behave in general. So let's dive into some examples. We'll start with television programs. So look at The Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
It's the easiest one to look at. Homer, complete, mess, obviously portrayed as the ignorant father, the idiot, that male caricature of stupid father who needs help with everything. And you just jump to another show like Family Guy, and you've got exactly the same with Peter Griffin.
Oh, a dollar!
Terrible father, terrible husband, completely stupid. And that's kind of the portrayal of men in most sitcoms, is the kind of useless husband, useless father. I've done a full separate video on negative portrayal of men in popular culture. I will link it at the end of this so you can watch that if you want to go into more examples, more details, and more information around that. But going forward in this video, I'll focus more on other areas besides kind of popular culture. So looking at news headlines, you'll see a lot of news headlines out there that really sensationalize like terrible men, like male CEOs and male politicians or things like that. Really, powerful men. It's always sensationalized how terrible they are, how ego-driven they are, how toxic they are. And then if you look at things that men are struggling with, like mental health problems, homelessness, etc., the headlines are usually downplayed. Then when you take a look at other ways headlines are used, inversely from that, when you look at things like all these cases of female teachers that have been convicted or being arrested for doing things with their students, those headlines are always downplayed massively, like they had a relationship with, or words that would not be used if it was a male teacher at all. So the language used is always very downplayed when it's a female doing exactly the same thing that a male would be doing, but the male headline would be a lot more aggressive against the man. And it should be, it shouldn't be double standards at all for that. A big example I'd like to raise is a 2019 advert that Gillette did called We Believe. And it was in response to the Me Too movement, and it was all about, toxic masculinity. And the advert was about, men holding men accountable. And, if you haven't seen the advert, it's on YouTube, you can go find it. It's just Gillette We Believe. But the advert very much portrays this idea as men are toxic. Men are horrible to women, boys are horrible to other boys in school, boys are horrible to girls. it just portrays this whole view that, you know, the whole male species is terrible, and that men need to start holding each other accountable so that this doesn't happen. You know, and it got a lot of praise, obviously, from people in the Me Too movement and things like that, saying, oh yes, this is right, men are terrible. There are terrible men out there, just like there are terrible women out there. So rather than trying to blame an entire gender for what people do, blame the people that do it. Just like terrible women do things, terrible men do things. And if we as good people came together to highlight this and come together, it would make a lot more impact on the world than trying to just blame a whole stereotype of people for it. And a big tool I've learned is take something that gets aimed at men. So, you know, oh, men are awful, men are toxic, whatever. Change men. Change men to a different race, a different gender, a different sexual orientation. Would that headline fly? Would that concept fly? If we turned around and said, all women are toxic, there would be a massive outcry. If we turned around and said, all Asian people are toxic, there would be a massive outcry, rightly so. But because it's men, it's okay. And all this is doing is enforcing the idea to men watching, to young men watching anything, that there is an inherent problem with being a man, and you are not worthy of being treated the same as everyone else, and you're kind of lowest on the rung. So it's not creating any form of positive reinforcement for men and putting them on the right track. It's just reinforcing the fact that you are not good enough. So adverts like that, well, you know, people might say, oh, it's doing good or whatever. I disagree with it. You know, we can put in the comments your opinions on that, but just an aside on that for me. A big one for me, obviously, is domestic abuse that I talk about a lot. And if you look at how all domestic abuse headlines are done, it's always portrayed as men are terrible, men are perpetrators, women are facing this war. But, you know, the real statistics and the real, you know, stories of male abuse victims are just consistently ignored. So it, again, perpetrates the stigma and myth that men don't get abused, or that it's not as bad for them, or that it doesn't happen as often, etc. So media really controls a big way as how men are seen throughout, you know, a variety of different ways, just from being providers to aggressors to domestic abuse to false accusations to everything really. And this ranges from children all the way through to older men. So it really has a massive effect on men in general. So I guess the takeaway from this video is that misandry in the media isn't just about, you know, what they're saying, it's about what they're doing, with the cultural implications and the societal implications that these kind of, you know, misandric rhetorics are having and are kind of enforcing on society, making women see men a certain way, making men see themselves a certain way, and it's really needs to stop. If you want to know more information and you want to learn a lot more about this subject, I will put in the description of the video a link to my book, Misandry, The War on Men Uncovered. It goes into all these kind of details, you know, well beyond representation in the media. But it's really a topic that the world needs to embrace and discuss, because it's an important topic, very much like feminism was a long time ago, where we wanted to get equal rights for women. And now things have changed, and now we actually need to get equality back, where good people are good people, bad people are bad people, and that needs to be the end of it. It's not about race, color, creed, sexual orientation, gender, etc. It just needs to be about right and wrong. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. You know, put in the comments what you think. What should we be discussing? Who needs to know these things? You know, obviously when it comes to the media, you can tell that there are certain news outlets, certain newspaper outlets, things like that, that are just so far gone. You can tell by all their headlines. But, you know, let's hear your thoughts. What do you got? And don't forget, if you do want to watch more around negative portrayals of men in popular culture, the video will come up on screen now.